Hello and welcome to After Scientology, Straight Up and Vertical, the weekly show where Tony Ortega and I get together and go over the weekly events in the world of Scientology. We did not do a show last week, but we're back in full force this week. Welcome back, Tony.
I apologize, Chris. I had gone on a family vacation. We connected while I was over there, but when I got back, I guess I picked up a cold on the plane. I just was not feeling good for a while. And you can hear I'm still recovering, but I'm most of the way back now.
Okay, good. Well, I will expect a copy of your PTS handling worksheets sent to me for compliance, so, we'll get that all straightened out. Now, we had a few things to cover, and I think we're going to lead with the most important, biggest deal here this week, which was the subject of a few stories over the last 2 weeks, which is Leah's lawsuit. Where are we at? What happened?
Yeah, it's been so long since we've heard anything about her lawsuit, but I've been keeping an eye on it. Leah sued Scientology in August 2023. This was a huge deal at the time because she was, finally somebody's going to sue Scientology over fair game, which the name of her podcast. I mean, this is something she's been focusing on for a long time. She was going to sue over the years of harassment, the way that they've not only been smearing her with all this garbage online, but, in real life, going to harass her family and make it very difficult for her to have deals. They've been visiting the people that she does business with. And so she wants to make a case in court that they have, defamed her and materially harmed her. So it was a big deal. And Scientology, of course, their argument was, hey, you picked a fight with us. You came out and started criticizing the church. We had no choice but to come to fight back. This is just a war of words. It's opinion, and you can't sue us over that. We're free to have our own opinion about Leah Remini. That's their position.
Yep.
So the first thing that happened was about a year ago, the church had filed some anti-SLAPP motions, some motions to strike. Basically, they were asking the court to gut the lawsuit and say all these things are not, you can't sue us over these things. So the judge at that time was this guy, Randolph Hammock. He looked at it and he agreed that there were a number of things that she was alleging, a number of the specific things that Scientology was putting online and calling her racist, calling her a bigot. And the judge agreed that, it is opinion. It's not, defamatory. So he removed a number of, based on Scientology's motion, he removed a number of those allegations. And there was at least one news service at the time, Chris, that wrote a story saying, oh, her lawsuit's been trashed. And I was like, what are you talking about? Because even though the judge had removed certain allegations, he had kept in 7 of her 8 causes of action,
right,
including the most serious ones, like interfering with her family, interfering with her business prospects. All that stuff was still in there. And the proof that she still had a strong lawsuit and Scientology was unhappy was that Scientology appealed, right? That's the proof that she still had a good lawsuit. So they appealed that, and then about a month later, Leah's side announced that they were appealing too. Neither side was happy with the decisions made by that judge, who Scientology removed, by the way.
Right.
So that's what we've been waiting for, like a year, waiting for the next step, which is that Scientology would be turning in its appeal brief to the higher court, the Second Appellate Division, California. And I've been watching the docket, and I've been waiting and waiting. And then I noticed something strange. And this was the first story that you're talking about that I wrote last week, was that I saw a notation that Scientology had blown their deadline, and not by a little. It was like they missed it by like 3 weeks. And the court was saying, hey, you missed your deadline. And I just thought I'd say something because I had never seen that. The 20-plus years I've been watching Scientology litigation, I don't know that it's all that unusual. But with Scientology, you just don't see that. I just thought that was weird. And so I just wrote a story saying, hey, I don't know what's going on, but Scientology missed their deadline. And it was pointed out to me that they would have a second deadline after that. And sure enough, it did come in. Then we got what we expected. And that was this 70-page just smearing Leah all over again with all the same stuff. I mean, an appeal is when you go to the higher court and say, this is what the lower court messed up on. It's very legalistic. You're not trying to litigate the case all over again. But Scientology, of course, used it as an opportunity to just dump all of these horrible allegations on Leah all over again. To me, that's a clear sign that what's going on is that this appellate attorney, Jeremy Rosen, a new name, I hadn't seen him used before, he's submitting this to the court, but he's really writing for David Miscavige, right? It's Miscavige that wants to see all these horrible attacks in there.
That's right.
And I just thought it was revolting. But, I knew people were going to want to see him. And so, and people were very curious about seeing everything in there. So then, but I didn't know, okay, so we know it's just awful, but is it good lawyering? I don't know. So then what I did was I asked a member of our community, he goes by the handle Texas Lawyer. I do know him. He is an appellate attorney in Texas, as he says he is. I checked that out. And for appellate things, I checked with him, and he gave it a good look. And he also said that it was way over the top on the language and the tone. None of this was necessary. He also felt that they were using some case law in ways that were just wrong. So he said, look, there's a chance they could prevail, but that he felt that there were some problems with it. But again, it's just so badly, so poorly aimed. And then the other thing I wanted people to understand is that may make David Miscavige happy. But this particular court is not naive about the Church of Scientology. This is the same Second Appellate Division that handled the Danny Masterson civil lawsuit that was, if you remember, initially forced into arbitration. They brought it to this court, and this court overturned that. This court was very intelligent about looking at Scientology as it is and not as it says it is.
That's right.
So that's this is if there's an appellate court that will look at this with some reality and not the way we've seen some other courts look at Scientology, then this may not work for them. And so the next step is this awful smeary thing has been submitted by Scientology. In a month or something, Leah's side will submit their cross appeal, which will be responding to this. And it'll be interesting, obviously, to see how they zero in on some of these same issues. But I just feel for Leah that, she's expressed that she's struggling after Mike Rinder's death, to have to sit here and get all these awful things said about her again that are such garbage.
Exactly. Well, it is the Scientology court playbook 101. This is, absolutely what they do. And you're right that, at least we've covered so many times, it's the David Miscavige special. Right, it's the thing he gets to sit and read it at night while he drinks his scotch or whiskey or whatever, and laugh at the lamentations of those who are hurt by Scientology. That's his thing. I don't mean to wax poetic or anything. I'm just saying this is all typical stuff for cults, and especially for Scientology. And you said we have a month or two for Leah's team to file their counter, and then at that point, then the judges go, okay, let's roll with this thing. Do we have any idea what kind of time frame we're looking at with that kind of thing?
Well, if we just went by the last time we were here with the Masterson case, the Danny Masterson victims made their appeal brief. A month later, so Scientology filed their response. And then I think it was like 2 or 3 months after that they held an oral hearing.
Okay.
I don't know if they'll do that in this case, but they had an oral hearing in the it was online. We got to watch. It was fun. And then that, I want to say it was about a month after that they announced their decision, and it was stunning. It was, just real quick, in that case, Scientology's been so successful forcing lawsuits from ex-members into arbitration. But this court made the point, yeah, but these women are suing over allegations of stalking and intimidation and harassment that took place after they had left the church.
Yep.
So how could they still be under those contracts, forcing them into arbitration when they left the church years ago?
Right.
So, and the allegations of harm are now. See, that's the other thing, is that they do argue that even if it's been 20 years, if you're trying to sue them over something that happened to you while you were in Scientology, those contracts still apply, even if you've been out for a long time. But in that case, they were suing over things that were happening to them then, after they had left. And that's the court. The court was very specific about that's why they said those contracts don't apply. So that's what I'm saying, is this is a court that looks very carefully at Scientology and it's what it says about itself and about these rules, which we haven't. Some other courts, they just sort of they don't care. They don't bother to learn. This court understands Scientology. Now, they'll pick 3 justices who aren't necessarily the same justices as before.
Right.
But still, I think you're looking at a court that's a little more enlightened about Scientology, and I think that bodes well for Leah.
Excellent. And to be clear, this is all an appeal process simply on what charges or what claims are being made in the lawsuit in the first place. We get this out of the way, and we're still just in the pretrial actions of this lawsuit, right?
This is just a preliminary ruling. I mean, this is what it's like trying to deal with Scientology in court.
Right.
Is that Leah filed her lawsuit, Scientology filed these motions. They don't like the result, and so they're appealing. I mean, most people wouldn't spend the money. Scientology just has this unlimited litigation budget.
Yeah.
And so here they are appealing a preliminary ruling. Then we go back to court, and assuming that, they preserve the lawsuit to a certain extent, then they still got to go to discovery. I mean, it's, years of process.
Yeah, it's just, I just wanted to kind of get the big picture so we kind of see just how baby steps this TAM process really is along the line here. Okay, so that's the legal update right now. Now, there was another very interesting story to me, which was along the lines of justice for stem cell nonsense being pushed by a couple Scientologists. What was this all about?
Yeah, I first wrote about this 4 years ago. A very interesting case where a couple of chiropractor Scientologists, right, natural combination, were accused by the government. They were being sued by the state of Georgia and the federal government of basically operating this total flim-flam scheme where they were recruiting other chiropractors to give these injections that they said were stem cell injections. Now, I want to be careful that, of course, there's amazing research being done with stem cells. Stem cells are really unique parts of the human body, and there's some really cutting-edge science. That's not what these guys were doing.
Right.
These guys were taking some material that had something to do with stem cells, so that it said it was, and then just saying, well, if we inject it, your arthritis will go away. And it's bogus. It's just bogus. And they have been, they were charging people $5,000 an injection.
Oh, my God.
And they were treating it kind of like an MLM. They were trying to recruit as many chiropractors. If you read how they were doing it, it was a classic Scientology-wise operation, right? So they got caught, and I first wrote, like I said, I first wrote about it 4 years ago. I'd kind of forgotten about that case. One of my readers pointed out that it had come to a conclusion. And sure enough, in December, the government won that case, and they were banned for life from ever having anything to do with stem cells again, ever, and fined $5 million. So I wanted to show that, to me, it's interesting because, yes, the government can still come down on Scientologists practicing health quackery.
Yes.
This was a great example of it. Unfortunately, that was December, And the government announced it early in January. Now, since January 20th, we've got a new administration in the White House, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the new Secretary of Health and Human Services, has talked about getting the FDA out of the way when it comes to stem cells.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, luckily the government came down on these guys just in time, because I don't think the government would go after them today. And one person who has been exploiting this quack therapy, financial field is Grant Cardone. He's big into it too. So, we're fortunate that a couple Scientologists got caught, but I don't know if any more will be.
Yeah, that is very unfortunate. And let me just say, Scientologists are particularly prone, from my own experience with this in and out of the church, to fall for an awful lot of scammery and nonsense when it comes to health concerns. I saw and experienced almost every fad you can imagine roll through Big Blue, the pack base, from raw meat diets to MSM supplements to every vitamin fad you could think about. It's all gone through that crew, and they're susceptible to this kind of thing more so than, I will say, your typical average consumer is. It's just kind of the nature of weird beliefs that they kind of become magnetic to one another in certain ways. And so, unfortunately, if we see a broad scale lessening of the regulations that are already, let's be honest, that are already piecemeal and barely applied when it comes to our health, I just don't think this bodes well for our future. So it might be the kind of thing you want to pay attention to and rolling ahead here, because this is real health concern stuff. And I would hate to see any of y'all or your families or friends fall for or be victimized by some scammers who are Scientologists, just because the FDA regulations fall off a bit. Be aware of what's going on out there with this stuff. They like to keyword stuff their scams, just like, Google's crap does. So stem cell, quantum, this kind of thing.
Right.
All right. So that all being said, let's move on. We had two other things I wanted to cover this week. First was fundraising for a museum for L. Ron Hubbard. Is this the event hall? What are we talking about here?
Yeah, I mean, they've been doing this forever. This was a new mailer for the L. Ron Hubbard Hall.
Okay.
This was, the flag land base is centered around the Fort Harrison Hotel. That's the jewel of the Scientology spiritual mecca. And then across the street, they built the flag building, the superpower building. And right away after that, we saw them start to fundraise for this thing called L. Ron Hubbard Hall, which is supposed to be right across from the flag building. And that's an event space that's supposed to hold like 3,600 people. And I don't know, they have this next week, they're having the L. Ron Hubbard birthday event at Ruth Eckerd Hall in Clearwater, which they do every year, and that only holds 2,100. My supposition was that they wanted to build L. Ron Hubbard Hall so they could have events like that in their own venue and not use somebody else's venue.
Yeah.
And then maybe they could have New Year's there. Maybe they could have IAS there. I don't know. Obviously the security be a little tighter, that kind of thing. So they've been fundraising for this forever. Meanwhile, I remember when, I don't know, a year or two ago, Mark Bunker was talking to me about how they were trying to swap some land for this idea they had for an L. Ron Hubbard museum. And the city was concerned about where they were going to put that. Well, the reason why this mailer grabbed my attention this week was not only that they're yet again asking for more money for L. Ron Hubbard Hall, which they've been raising money for forever, but that the woman who wrote the letter referred to it as L. Ron Hubbard Hall and Museum. And I wonder if that means they've now given up on the idea of two separate locations, and they're going to put it all in one big one. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I just thought that was interesting, and readers kind of found it fun to look at the things that they're saying in that. But we like to keep an eye on what they're doing. And actually, I'm talking to Mark Bunker because I think there may be a city council thing about that coming up pretty soon. He's going to go-to for us. So, I mean, this is an active thing. I think, I know there's always the accusation that David Miscavige likes to raise money forever and never actually do anything with it. I think they probably will build this eventually, but they just keep changing the plans and that kind of thing. They're not in a hurry.
No, they're definitely not in a hurry. It's a let's just say there's multiple sources of income in Scientology, and that is by design. Yeah, and this would be just one of many. The other thing they might be trying to solve, by the way, it just occurred to me that I'll also comment on, might be if they own their own building and hall that they're going to put their own events on and it's all private, then maybe that would avoid even union interference, because when they would put on events at the shrine, we had to have union workers there, and they are on a very, very different clock from Sea Org members. Let me just say, all the enforced breaks and time off and this and that. Yeah, the Sea Org doesn't have any of that, and
Right.
so it was a very interesting sort of comparison for me in the Sea Org, seeing that. And it occurred to me in Florida they might have the same issues over there, and they got to pay them more, and it takes more time. And
That's a great observation, because I remember there was a IAS held. I don't know, 12 or 13 years ago, and a reporter got in and took pictures and stuff.
Yeah.
And Scientology was super pissed off. And then I noticed that the article quickly disappeared. Like they must have threatened to sue the publication or something. Yeah. And it was right after that I started hearing about L. Ron Hubbard Hall. And I wondered if they were motivated by that they wanted something with better security. But then somebody pointed out, no, they've been talking about L. Ron Hubbard Hall even longer than that. I guess it's something they've wanted for a long time. But I think that those are some concerns they probably have. Outsiders as employees, outsiders with security concerns, and they'd be able to, with a size 3,600, it'd be about halfway between Ruth Eckerd and the Shrine.
Yep.
And so they could end up having both birthday event and New Year's there. Alex thinks that they would never give up IAS in England because it's the biggest thing they have in England and Europe, and he's probably right about that. But I think there are definitely reasons why Dave wants to have his own venue for holding events. So I think they'll build it eventually.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right about that. I think they're going to fundraise probably about 3 times as much as they need by the time it's all done. And we come to, speaking of some money, and we mentioned Grant Cardone, there was this success story of some kind posted from one of Grant Cardone's employees. What was this about?
Yeah, so Sherry Hamilton is his chief operating officer, and has been for more than a decade. And she's a Scientologist too. And I thought it was interesting that she posted something about how she's given so much money to the Eastern U.S. ideal orgs, and Philadelphia in particular. And she made the point herself, she's in Miami. She'll probably never even use the Philly ideal org. But she's got, I don't know, I just thought it was really interesting the way she tried to explain why it was so important to give so much money and why now. I thought there was some interesting coded language in that about maybe the changing administration, maybe Grant's involvement in it. I don't know. But I tried to provide some annotations that I thought were a little bit funny to kind of explain to people what I think was going on. But I just thought it was a remarkable mailer that this woman that's, clearly such an important part of Grant Cardone's business is also so dedicated to Scientology like he is. I don't know. To me, that's important.
Absolutely. His whole inner circle is, let's be clear, that it's a condition of employment. I know for a fact within at least his inner group, and I believe, quite a bit out, she braggingly said something about running a 200-man organization. I don't know if those are all paid employees of Grant Cardone. He's got a number of companies, I think like 11 or something. So there's a lot, his fingers are in all kinds of pies. Real estate investment being one of them. them is mainline, and I can't help but think to myself, is he putting himself into that situation of, oh, I'll help you guys in either locating, finding, or, renovating the properties for the church in, say, Philadelphia. I don't know what they've got lined up already there, but isn't that Miscavige's home turf?
That's true. Well, originally,
right? I know he plays at having ties there, and within the Scientology world, Philadelphia is important for that. So, it might be the kind of thing that somebody like Grant would leap at the idea of, here's how to impress the big boss with something. So,
well, and with Grant Cardone, it's curious because I noticed this a long time ago that. He is really successful on social media. He's got a massive following, and I remember he made an appearance at the Hollywood Celebrity Center in LA. This was like 10 years ago or something, and he just went there to give a talk, and the place was packed. I mean, absolutely packed. And I remember thinking, when's the last time Scientology had a packed auditorium simply for recruiting people? It doesn't happen anymore.
That's right.
Why aren't they using Grant like this all over the place? And I remember thinking, Chris, I think Dave, if it's not coming from Dave, he's not thrilled about it. And that Dave can't get over himself enough to use Grant Cardone more that way. And so now it's interesting because Grant has gotten so well known nationally, but also so tight with the Trump administration. I don't know. I wonder if Dave is tempted to use him more now. I don't know, because like you say, when you said that about maybe he'll get involved with ideal orgs, I kind of feel like Miscavige holds Grant Cardone at arm's length to a certain extent.
That could be. That could be.
He might be a little jealous of his success or something. I don't know.
I wonder, what my mind goes back to, since we're looking at this for a second, is the volatility of the public imagery, and maybe some back off on that after the Cruise fiasco of the mid 2000s. Tom Cruise decided to be the name and face of Scientology and go big, and look what happened. And they're very reactionary. I'm not trying to put more there for Miscavige as a forward thinker. I don't think he is really a big forward thinker, but maybe you get burned once bitten, twice shy, whatever, right? I don't know. I'm just wondering, because there's so little effort made in a public sense. I wonder if Miscavige isn't more interested in what these people can do behind the scenes, and if he makes it public, maybe it blows up in some unfortunate way. For sure, with the fingers in the pies that they're getting into the White House right now, if they're even halfway smart, they have to know that those are tentative positions and that they are in no way in good permanent situation there, and maybe they want to solidify that. All this purely conjectural. We'll see what comes out of all of this, but it's certainly is interesting.
Well, and along with the Cruise thing, the thing about Grant Cardone is he's not afraid to say, "Hey, Scientology, help me. I like Scientology." He, that's another reason why I don't understand why Miscavige doesn't use him more, because he's super popular. He might be able to bring people in. He's willing to talk about it. I know. I have this feeling Miscavige doesn't like the idea because it's not his idea.
And that's got legs. There's no reason that's not true. It absolutely could be. Trying to get into the head of Miscavige is a difficult thing. You will find yourself being burned sometimes out there. So let's see what happens. But regardless, these people's proximity to real power at this point is something to be concerned about, and we are keeping an eye on it. And so stick with us here on this, because this is where we follow this stuff. And I haven't forgotten about the America First Policy Institute either. I started looking into that, and that's a deep rabbit hole. That Trish Duggan's on the board of directors of this group is alarming to anyone who is concerned about Scientology and our government having close relations relationships. That's a thing right now. It's not something that we're conjecturing about. So we're going to keep on top of this stuff and let you all know what we keep up with. So, Tony, any other previews or anything on what's coming up this next week?
You know what's happening this week? L. Ron Hubbard turns 114.
Oh my God. That's right. That's right. March 13th is coming up. Okay. Well, let's see what happens during L. Ron Hubbard week. Okay, Tony, thank you very much. Hey, folks out there, see the address for Tony's Substack right there under his smiling mug there. You can go to his Substack, get subscribed, get your daily notifications, and check in with us for the summary on Monday. I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.